One of the best ways to build wealth and add value to your home is to buy the deals that have a little hair on them. So, what I learned from early on is that most buyers want the remodeled house. They want nice bathrooms, nice kitchens with granite countertops, tiled showers, new vinyl plank flooring, fresh paint, a new electrical box, a new roof, freshly painted exterior, nice landscaping, and that's great. But when you buy that way, you are buying at the top of the market.
But this is my house, Mommy. So what I asked Mr. Kringle for, it is, I know it is.
Welcome to The Pursuit of Home, coming to you from New York City. This is real people buying real estate and their unique journey to get there. We share the tips, tricks, and frameworks to help you navigate the bumps in the road that you won't see on reality TV or social media, and which no one has talked about until now. These are the emotional, psychological, ethical, and even spiritual challenges you're more than likely to encounter yourself. Learn from experts who've been there and hang out with me, Scott Harris, your host, who's helped thousands of people buy homes in Manhattan over the last 2 decades. Welcome to The Pursuit of Home, where we explore what it really means to find and create a place to call home. Today's conversation is about transition, both in career and in mindset, and how real estate can become a vehicle for freedom, even if you start from outside the industry. I'm joined today by Jonathan Hayek, a former public school teacher who spent nearly a decade in the classroom before slowly building a portfolio of small multifamily properties. And today, he's the owner of Endurance Properties. And I want to get into the name there because I know we have something in common. He's also the host of the Source of Commercial Real Estate podcast, where he now focuses on value-add commercial deals, especially in the industrial space. But all of this is in the big picture of home ownership and home buying for you. So we're going to talk about what it really takes to take a big leap. In this case, from a W-2 job to a full-time investing, why industrial real estate may be an underrated opportunity, whether it makes sense to continue to rent your home or buy your home, and maybe some other lessons that Jonathan learned along the way that apply to you as you build a vision for home and long-term wealth. So Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Scott.
You're very welcome. You spent a decade in education before you dove into real estate. What was the moment, maybe the mindset shift, that made you say, I need to build something different?
There was a moment that I was talking to my wife. I remember exactly where we were. We were in the first home that we owned together. And I was a special ed teacher at the time, making probably $56,000 a year. She was working for a non-for-profit organization, making significantly less than me. And I said some comment to her like, I think we're just not going to have very much money in our lifetime. And this is just how it's going to be. And I left the conversation at that. And then over the next few days, I continued to think about that conversation. And I was probably 31 or 32 years old at the time. And I thought, you know what? That's not good enough for me. I am too young to just be satisfied with the status quo and to just say, hey, this is how I'm stuck for the rest of my working career and the rest of my life. I'm going to allow other people to determine how much money I earn. And so it was really at that point that I decided that I was going to go kind of all in on real estate investing. And that was really the turning point for me.
I don't always ask this question, Jonathan, but I'm trying to envision you in your home. Did you own your home at the time?
We did, yes.
Okay. So you've bought this home together, you and your wife. And how long had you been there?
I'd say 6 or 12 months at that point.
Okay. So I want to try, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I want to try to tie that together. Like you had just bought this house. Was there something about owning this home that sort of catalyzed this change in you? Like all of a sudden you're a homeowner and it was like something bigger blossomed inside of you? I mean, can you touch on that a little bit?
I think homeownership and, we were early in our marriage at that point. And so all that stuff can add stress as we started to work through finances and, what does homeownership actually cost? And this house was a little bit unique. We were doing a significant remodel to it. We bought it at an online auction, and it was a disaster when we bought it. And so we were remodeling the entire thing. And then that combined with my wife and I enjoy the finer things in life. We enjoy traveling. We like nice things. We enjoy freedoms, financial freedom and geographical freedom. And so we're trying to match up this desire to have nice things, a nice house, nice vacations, kids eventually one day, which we now have, and trying to square that with the amount of money we were earning at the time. And so in my mind, I think that conversation, that the catalyst was like, the numbers are not adding up here. And our numbers moving forward, our cost of living is only going to increase. My salary is not going to increase that much. As a teacher, there is a definite cap on the amount of money you can earn no matter what you do. And so I think all of that combined together was the catalyst for that conversation.
Yeah, we don't have to go too much more into it, but I do think it's interesting that the home that you bought together, invested in together, ended up in some ways being like this partner in the transition that you made. Now, you spent a decade in education, and then you started flipping homes. And it sounds to me, even based on the way that you were describing it, that you're a numbers person. So you started flipping homes, buying small multifamily. What were some of the early lessons that you brought that shaped the way you operate today? Because it sounds like you've had this numbers, sort of the numbers work or they don't work mindset. And did teaching inform the approach that you brought to real estate?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I'd have to think more about that to think about what role teaching played, other than the fact that teaching, I don't know if it causes it or if these types of people go into teaching, but I am a relationship-based person. As far as numbers go, I am a big picture numbers guy. I don't love spreadsheets. I have lots of spreadsheets. I don't enjoy them. I don't love the nitty gritty numbers. I am a big picture and relationship focused kind of person. That's where a lot of my deals have come. That's how, I've managed to have some success in real estate investing, is through relationships. And so that's where I'd say my focus is, and where a lot of my strengths come and where my success has come.
What did you teach?
I was a special education teacher.
So first, thank you for doing that. My mother-in-law was a special ed teacher for many years. I have a very bird's eye view on just how special those teachers are, how much they care. And if you were able to do that, then you obviously have a lot of patience, which can be helpful in real estate.
And, just as I was sitting here thinking, I think patience plays such a role in real estate, especially when you come from it from like my kind of perspective. I'm an investor, and so I'm looking for deals that have some hair on them, with people that are having challenges in life. And it can take time for these people to make decisions and to follow through on things. I'm going through a deal right now that I have been working on for now 5 months. It is still not closed, but it just takes patience and belief and nurturing relationships along the way, good communication, and knowing that, hey, if I continue doing the right things and communicating and nurturing relationships, good things are going to happen. And I think those are skills that caused me to be a good teacher and have also helped me to be successful in real estate as well.
Yeah, those early deals probably gave you some insight, maybe a crash course in how when you flip the property, you've already cleaned up a lot of the hair on the deal, and now you're on the other side. How did it teach you about what buyers think? And I think as a follow-up to that, what do you wish more buyers understood about the homes that they're purchasing?
One of the best ways to build wealth and add value to your home is to buy the deals that have a little hair on them. So what I learned from early on is that most buyers want the remodeled house. They want nice bathrooms, nice kitchens with granite countertops, tiled showers, new vinyl plank flooring, fresh paint, a new electrical box, a new roof, freshly painted exterior, nice landscaping, and that's great. But when you buy that way, you are buying at the top of the market. The only way at that point, if you're buying like that, the only way you're adding value and building wealth is you're banking on market appreciation. And if you own that house for 20 years, you're probably going to get some appreciation and you're going to end up doing fine. But a lot of people, they're looking to get into, say, a starter home, and they say, well, I'm probably going to be in this house for 3 to 5 years. That's totally fine. But especially in this market, if you buy at the top of the market, a brand new remodeled house, and you want to sell it in 3 to 5 years, it's probably not going to be worth a whole lot more than it is today. Maybe a little bit. You might count on, 1 to 3% appreciation per year by that point. And then you also have to factor in your, closing costs and commissions and all that. And so you might make a little bit of money in 3 to 5 years, but the real value is built in buying the worst house in the best neighborhood. So think about, maybe it's that school district that you want to be in, or that really great neighborhood close to amenities. And maybe there's a house that has bathrooms from the 80s, the kitchens from the 70s, the landscaping is unkept, it needs a new roof. Those are the deals where you build wealth, where you can, go to YouTube University, learn to tile a shower, learn to do some landscaping, do the kitchen cabinets and granite countertops. And so that is where you are going to build the wealth, because when you pay a flipper like me to do that, you are paying the flipper's costs, their material costs, their labor costs, and their profit. And so a lot of people like to have that super nice house, which is fine, but that is ultimately not the way you build wealth. You build wealth by buying the worst house in the best neighborhood and doing the work yourself and putting some elbow grease into it. That's where you build wealth in real estate.
Yeah, I just want to point out to everybody that if you are someone who is absolutely deathly afraid of renovating, then you know yourself. You want to go build your wealth maybe by your job and not through your real estate. And so it's a matter of knowing yourself well enough. I mean, I can divide the world neatly by people who want to make sure that, that people who want to add value to their home, and the people who just want to buy it tomorrow and just get it at a good enough price that if they were forced to sell very quickly, that they would just break even. They wouldn't lose their shirt. And it's an interesting dynamic, but you have to know yourself well enough to say, okay, what am I approaching this? Am I trying to build wealth through my real estate purchase? Or am I just trying to find the house that I really love that I can just plug and play? All right. How often I want to talk about the teacher that's left inside of you. Okay. Cause you're hiring agents to help you market and sell these homes, perhaps. How often are you left feeling like you want to teach the agent or the buyer or seller on the other side of the deal? And, you said it sounds like you're patient. This one deal took you 5 months to close, or it hasn't even closed yet. What do you what do you usually like to teach them as you work your way through these deals? Because you can probably take the teacher out of the school, but you probably can't take that teacher out of you.
My ability to teach people when I'm buying and selling on market through a real estate agent or a broker is pretty limited. Everything gets funneled through one or multiple agents. And, at that point, it's like a game of telephone. And my ability to educate a buyer or a seller at that point is very, very limited. Where my teaching skills can come in is I've done a lot of deals direct to owner. So a lot of my best deals have come off market without agents through direct mail or relationships. And
this is when you're buying from a seller.
Exactly.
From the current owner. Okay.
Exactly. So oftentimes there's distress involved. Somebody has died, or a renter has trashed a property, or there's some other distress happening, and I'm buying direct to seller. And in those cases, I can have a face-to-face, one-on-one conversation with the seller, and I can talk to them about the market. I can talk to them about what it's going to cost to remodel their home, and I can talk to them about their options. If you want top dollar, then you need to do, list 1 through 10, and it's going to cost you roughly this amount of money, and you might sell it for this, or it might sell for less. And so I can have those conversations, very honest and direct and kind of low confrontation conversations with sellers. And I can educate them about the process. And I think I'm pretty good at that. I enjoy it. Whereas on market, when you've got a couple agents involved, and agents they're well-intentioned, but they're salespeople. They're trying to get the deal done. Their focus isn't so much on educating people; it's on getting the deal done. My ability to educate and teach in those scenarios is much more limited than going direct to seller.
All right, so I understand that the teaching element is pretty limited, but it sounds like you're able to do to add value and sort of get your own deals done in this way. Are there questions that you wish buyers would ask? I mean, have you seen a buyer who's just done a really excellent job taking a slightly different approach? They were like, wow, this buyer that's coming to my property is doing a good job of like covering his bases. And this is the kind of person that I enjoy doing business with.
I think when I interact with a lot of buyers, I'll talk about for my investment properties. So I just sold an 8-unit apartment building, and I was pretty surprised at the lack of due diligence that buyer did from the investment side. He did inspections. He did some inspections, but there were some red flags that came up in the inspections, and the buyer did not ask questions about those red flags. And unfortunately, those issues came up after the due diligence period had expired, and then I was put in a really tough position. The due diligence period had expired. The buyer came back to me with these issues, and I was saying, why didn't you ask these questions during your due diligence period? Because now that period has expired and I don't have to do anything about it. But I wanted the deal to close. We both wanted the deal to close. So I was put in a really tough position at that point. And so I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions, especially in this market. It is, I think in a lot of markets, we're leaning towards it being a buyer's favored market. And you have the ability, especially if a house has been sitting on the market for a while, you see some watermarks in the basement. Go ahead and ask some questions about those watermarks in the basement. Like, hey, have you had some water in the basement? Has there been flooding? When's the last time there was flooding? Have you tested for mold? Do you see mold anywhere? Do you mind if I test for mold? Can I get an extra 2 weeks of due diligence so I can test for mold? Things like that. Don't be afraid to ask questions like that. If it's, chipping paint on fascia or a roof that looks questionable, don't be afraid to ask some extra questions and due diligence. Doing checks with the county if there have been code violations or outstanding permits, or if a bunch of work has been done on the property, but you check with the county or the town and no permits have been pulled, that might raise a red flag. Asking for paid invoices if they say, oh, the roof was just done, if you just had a bunch of plumbing done. Hey, I'd love to see some paid invoices. So the scope of the work, how much it cost, who the company was. And so I'd say just don't be afraid to be a little, be a squeaky wheel, ask some extra questions, and hopefully a good agent is going to walk beside you and help you to develop those questions if you don't know the right questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, the two things I would point out, just to go back to what you were saying, where you had an awkward engagement with a buyer who had let his due diligence period expire. In a lot of markets where listeners are, the down payment to purchase a property can be limited. So like as a seller, you're kind of not as protected. If somebody's got $5,000 as a down payment or $25,000, as opposed to my market where people put 10 or 15% as a down payment, they're not walking away. And so they're really watching the due diligence period pretty carefully. Those are great questions to ask. And you definitely, as a home buyer, I think it could be very scary to go that alone. And that's why you do need a good agent to walk alongside you, as you said, and help you ask those questions, help you think of the questions that you're not asking. But I want to back up 1 second about what is probably more scary than anything is making that leap into looking and buying a home in the first place. And just to go back to you making this, realization, hey, I'm, making $56,000 a year and you're making less, and we need to figure out how to get into a new industry. How did you make that leap and, in terms of getting into real estate in the first place?
I knew that real estate was the way that I wanted to build wealth. Building wealth through teaching is not a thing. People don't do that. So if you're a six-figure self-employed person or an engineer or somebody where it's realistic for you to live below your income and you can put a bunch of money away in savings and you really can build wealth that way, great. I was not going to do that. I knew I needed some high-paying, at the time it was a side hustle, to help me build wealth, provide the life for my family that my wife and I envisioned. And that was nice vacations, geographical freedom, time freedom. And so it was nights, weekends, holidays, summer breaks, winter breaks that we started flipping houses. And so I would use the proceeds from the house flips to buy small multifamily properties, duplexes, fourplexes. And eventually I was able to buy enough small multifamily properties to replace my teaching income. And so I quit my teaching job in 2019 when I was able to replace my teaching income with rental income. And so I went all in on real estate at that point, and I basically decided to give it a year. So I said, I'll give this thing a year. I still have my teaching certificate. And so I can go back to teaching if this idea of real estate full-time flops and I fall on my face, I can go back to teaching. And I did not have to go back to teaching. I'm still self-employed in real estate investing today. And so that was really the catalyst. That's how I made the transition. It wasn't like I quit teaching on one day and then the next day I decided to start real estate investing. There was a bleed over period where I built up my passive rental income cash flow and then eventually quit teaching once I had equaled my teaching salary.
Yeah, I think what happens, the way I would make a direct parallel to buying a home, it's not like you're leaving your home the day you start looking for the next home. You're looking, you're going to try to get educated and confident about where the market is. And then if it doesn't work out, you're still in your home.
Right.
But I think a lot of people get very scared. Now, you shifted from flipping houses, then you were buying multifamily. Now you shifted into industrial assets. Walk us through like the learning curve. I mean, were there big surprises or mindset shifts you had to make when you were moving? Or did the skills translate much more easily than you expected?
So industrial real estate is considered commercial real estate, whereas my small multifamily stuff is considered residential real estate. Residential real estate involves a lot of emotions. When you're selling to a family or a first-time home buyer, they have lots of anxieties. They're concerned about this. They're concerned about that. They don't know the questions to ask. They're concerned about numbers. They want the grass to be mowed and the mulch to look nice. And they want the front door a certain color. In the commercial world, there is very much less emotion, and it's more based on numbers. And so there's much more market analysis that has to be done, much more knowledge about rental rates, supply and demand in the area, what your potential tenants are desiring in a property, things like that. And so, I've really been learning the commercial world for the last 3 years, whereas I feel like in the residential world, I could listen to a couple Bigger Pockets podcasts and have a pretty good idea about how to buy a duplex, how to buy a single family home, how to run those numbers. In the commercial world, it takes years and lots of experience to learn this. And so I've taken down, 4 commercial deals at this point. I've sold 1, currently own 3, and I'm continuing to learn. I have my own podcast. It's about commercial real estate because I couldn't find a place to learn about commercial real estate. And so I started my own podcast and invited people on that I wanted to learn from. And so that's really how I learned. That's 3 years in the making. And I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. There are a lot more mistakes you can make in the commercial world than the residential world. And so I just feel like the stakes are higher in the commercial world, and it's a lot easier to make mistakes in the commercial world. But on the other hand, the payoff can be much, much higher in the commercial world as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would just in terms of your podcast and the things you're learning about, non-residential commercial real estate. What trends or shifts are you seeing in that space that maybe residential focused investors or home buyers should be paying attention to? What are you seeing in terms of things that bleed into the residential space?
I think it's always good to be paying attention to market dynamics. And so, you can just do a pretty quick Google search to find out where people are moving, where people are leaving, what home prices are doing in different markets. Maybe you're a renter, and so learning about how much supply of multifamily is coming online. And so I think about a market like Austin, Texas, which a lot of people think really, really highly of, really fun place to live. Historically, over the last 10 years, great returns, property value skyrocketing. But then developers got a hold of that, and they started developing multifamily like crazy in Austin. And so now you're seeing this massive supply of multifamily in Austin, which means rent rates are going down. And so if you're a renter in Austin, it's a pretty good time to be a renter, because you can potentially get Class A, really nice multifamily, and maybe pay less than what you're paying right now, because there's so much supply. And so that might trickle over somehow into the residential world if you're looking to buy something. I don't have as much information about like single family starts in Austin, but things like that are really good to pay attention to, because if lots of people are moving to certain markets like Nashville or Raleigh or Charlotte, then there's a pretty good chance that single family home values are going to do pretty well over time, because I don't know that any markets are really building a lot of single family homes right now. We need a ton of single family homes. It's really expensive to buy it, hard to make the numbers to work on the development side. So a lot of developers are building multifamily where they can scale. But then that causes rent rates to drop. And so, all these different market dynamics happening. And so I think the Sun Belt is really interesting because there's a lot of demand there, a lot of people still moving to the Sun Belt. But on the other hand, there's still a ton of supply of housing in the Sun Belt, like apartments coming online. And so just paying attention to things like that if you're looking for good deals and ways to build wealth.
And I think you were saying you live in Colorado. So are you doing deals in other places? Maybe I think you were also saying that your home, you're actually renting your home and then you're investing. It sounds like you felt like that market, it was too expensive to buy a home for yourself, but you're maybe buying real estate in other places that have better value. Is that kind of how you're doing it right now?
Yep, exactly. So I live in a resort town in Colorado. It's very expensive. Average single family homes, like 1.5 million. My rent, I don't own my home. I rent. My rent is $4,000 a month. And so there's no way I could own a home and have a mortgage of $4,000 a month, not to mention the equity that I would have to put into that. And so from a number standpoint, it makes way more sense in very expensive markets to rent than it does to own. And so, so my industrial investments are outside of where I live. I invest where it makes sense. I have investment properties in Cheyenne, Wyoming, Des Moines, Iowa, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So these places are more affordable, and it's just where the investment numbers make sense for me.
And, some people speaking of mortgage rates or the high cost right now, a lot of people are on the sidelines kind of waiting for mortgage rates to come down. I think, what you might say to them is, hey, maybe it's better to rent for a minute while, in a market where the rents are lower than the cost of carrying. But is there a counter argument that you would make to say, hey, that would get them off the sidelines? Or, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, there's a million reasons to own your home. For a lot of people, the numbers may make more sense to rent, but that doesn't mean everyone needs to rent. I said my rent is $4,000 a month. Well, my landlord's raising my rent. And so I had no control over that. And so, I ultimately had the choice of I could pay the increased rent or I could leave. And I have young kids. I have a family. This is our home right now. And so I really don't want to uproot them. And so there's definitely an argument to be made that it makes sense, even if you pay a little more, at least you have the security of knowing that you have your home, nobody can kick you out of it. You are in charge of your housing. And if you choose to leave, that's up to you, but no one can force you to leave. And so I think that's a great argument in favor of owning. I think if we eventually are able to get a great deal on an off-market property that needs a bunch of work, we would make a purchase so we don't have to rent and we can continue to build wealth. But yeah, I mean, the numbers are one thing. And so I am aware of the numbers, but on the other hand, there are lots of reasons besides numbers that people choose to own homes.
Now, I mean, and it's also important, like sounds like you have good discipline around the numbers for yourself. And, some other folks may say, well, look, I'm not going to be a real estate investor. I'm going to be a lawyer or whatever they happen to do. And so they don't have to necessarily be as disciplined about the numbers, but as you're using all this capital to invest in real estate, it's good to maintain the discipline. Now, couple final questions here. What does home mean to you now after everything you've experienced? You used to own a home, now you're renting, personally, professionally, you're in and out of real estate all the time. So what does home mean to you?
Home is comfort, and it's where my family, my kids, I have 2 young kids, where we can all laugh, have fun, play, and grow together comfortably.
And if you could leave listeners with one piece of advice as they start to, or continue to move on the path, their own pursuit of home, what would that be?
Be careful about getting focused on buying your perfect forever home, and instead consider that house with some hair on it, the worst house in the best neighborhood. Don't be afraid to do a little work, even if you pay for it, even if you pay a contractor to do it. I have built more wealth in the last 8 years of being in real estate than I imagined I would ever make in my entire life, and it's completely due to real estate. So don't be afraid to buy a house in a great location with great bones, but might need a little bit of work.
Jonathan Hayek, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
That's it for this episode of The Pursuit of Home. I hope today's conversation gave you insight, clarity, and maybe even a new way to think about your own home search. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review the show. It really helps us reach more people on their own journey to home ownership. The Pursuit of Home is proudly produced by Fame, the B2B podcast production agency. Find The Pursuit of Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you want to connect, you can find me anytime on social media or at Magnetic. Until next time, happy home hunting.